What's going on, guys? It's Nick here, back with another video. It's Wednesday. It's time to take a look at my favorite trade targets for week 7. A lot of new names on the list this week, partly because I now have the strength of schedule table up on the website. It takes a little bit into the season for us to truly know who the best and worst matchups are by position, but after 6 weeks, it's still not perfect, but we have a much better idea of who the teams are that we're targeting, who the teams are that we're avoiding. So a few players we go over today are either going to be great or bad playoff schedules and remaining strength of schedules. Start off with sells this week, and one player on that list that definitely hits on the really difficult playoff strength of schedule is DeAndre Swift. He's coming off that huge game on primetime, which is always great if you're looking to sell a player because, most people watch the primetime games. And so everyone in your league, or probably 80% of the people in your league, watched him go off on primetime. So it'll be a little bit easier to sell him. The thing is, despite, I'd say by far the best game of the season for him, probably the best game, I didn't look, but probably the best game he would have had even last year as well. So a good time to sell high when it's one of the best games of a player's career. But despite that, he still only had 17 total opportunities, so counting carries and targets, and he did play the lowest snap share of the season. Monangai still mixed in for 6 opportunities. He did play on 35% of the snaps. So I don't want people to think it's Swift had this monster game after the bye, they're featuring him rest of the season. No, that was the lowest snap share he had all year. Monangai still mixed in for 35% of the snaps. And if you look at the playoff schedule, it is brutal. The Bears have the single hardest playoff schedule among all running backs. They face the Browns, the Packers, and the 49ers. So he's going to start off the playoffs with the single hardest matchup you can have as a running back. And then in the semifinal week, he'll have the 4th toughest matchup for running back. So it's not great. He's still my running back 20 season. So he's still a running back 2 in my eyes. He's going to have games like this. Again, that was one of the better games he's going to have. Could be the best game we'll have all season. So I don't think that will happen every week, but he's going to have some good games where he mixes in a touchdown, he busts off a long reception. But don't expect that to happen all the time. So still just my running back 20. He's a mid to low end running back 2. If you could package him with a flex wide receiver to get an upgrade at wide receiver or running back, whichever you're kind of thinner at and you need, or maybe if someone was willing to give you Judkins, Hall, Scadaboo, Javonte, I'd want all of them over Swift rest of the season. Another sell high is Omarion Hampton, although not really a sell high, it's really just a sell. And I got a lot of questions, so I put him on the trade table on the website. A lot of people wanted me to go over that because they're like, oh, your note on him sounds like he's a buy. Because the note I have for Hampton on the trade table is that he's a low-end running back 1, weeks 13 plus. And again, some people have been like, oh, great, he's going to be a low-end running back 1 when he returns. What I'm saying in that note is weeks 13 plus. Week 13 is a very long ways away. I know maybe it doesn't seem like it, but in terms of fantasy, that is after the heart of the fantasy season where you've got injuries like Hampton, you've got more that are going to pile up. You've got a ton of teams on bye. It is a problem that the playoffs start in week 15. And I'm thinking in that general, a couple weeks before that, that's when he's going to come back and be useful. So if you have Hampton, you need to survive until the final few weeks of the regular season before I think he's going to help you again. And that's assuming they don't trade for another running back. That's assuming Vidal doesn't continue playing really well. And if he does, maybe they opt for committee even when Hampton is back. Because it's not like he's going to be 100% when he returns. I know everyone wants teams to not rush players back, but the odds are the Chargers are going to be in the playoff hunt. They're going to need him back. And so I don't think they're going to rush him back when he's 50%, but he's not going to be 100%. So that first week he's back, I don't know how much we can trust him. If he's mixing in and out of the lineup with Vidal or another running back they trade for, I don't even know if he can achieve that low-end running back 1. So there's just a lot of factors here where I'm a little bit concerned. I think people are assuming they see a player go on IR. They're like, okay, going to miss 4 weeks, back after that. They've been pretty vocal about how they're already not anticipating him back after the 4. It could be 6 weeks. It could be 7 weeks. It could be a while before he returns. And that's just when he returns. And there's no guarantee that, if the injury is this bad, where it's an ankle that is going to take that much time to recover from, He is not going to be 100%, and they don't want him to be featured in this backfield. And it's already a backfield where he's running behind a bad offensive line, and he's had good games, but it's not like he's been a high-end running back once. So I have concerns about him long-term, especially if you are 3-3 or worse. I would absolutely swap him for a different running back too. I don't even care that much which running back two it is. If you are kind of hovering around 500 and you are certainly not a lock to make the fantasy playoffs, I would be concerned just rostering him on my bench and just waiting and not being able to use him. I would rather just get a different running back too, even if in the fantasy playoffs it ends up that Omarion Hampton is a little bit more valuable than the person you trade for. That player will at least help you get through the playoffs, and you can't win the championship if you don't make it to the playoffs. Now, if you are 5-1, 6-0, absolutely just sit on him. Like, there's no point at that point of being like, oh, let's get him for a different running back too. Like, if you are 5-1 or 6-0, you have made it that far. Honestly, I would say in spite of Omarion Hampton. Like, it hasn't been because of him. Maybe the one nuke game, maybe a couple okay games, but you've got a very strong team at that point, or you've gotten super lucky. You can afford some losses, and you're probably good enough to survive without him, to where I wouldn't want to just trade him for any other running back too. But if you're on the other end of the spectrum, you still got to make it to the playoffs, and he's not going to help you do that. So I would trade him for a different running back too. Another sell high, I would say, is Travis Kelce. This one feels kind of easy, and it's compounded by not only, of course, having Rashee Rice going back, but Kansas City does have the toughest playoff schedule for tight ends. Again, Rice being back really just hurts Kelce, I would say, directly. I mean, it hurts everyone, obviously, because he's capable of 10, 12 targets in any given week, and when you're taking that much target share away, everyone is going to be impacted by that. But it hurts Kelce specifically because he operates in the exact same area of the field as Travis Kelce. And we saw that last season. Kelce was barely used to start the year when Rice was healthy, but then Rice goes down. They really have to lean on Travis Kelce rest of season. With Rice back, I think, this team, honestly, is awesome. And I think that's the one saving grace for Kelce, is that Mahomes is playing great. They're hitting plays deep downfield, which means they're sustaining drives. They're getting into the red zone. They're scoring a lot of points. And that's good for everyone. So even Rice coming back, it's not like everyone gets tanked in value, because if they're just going to maintain like 30 points per game, everyone walks into every matchup with 2 touchdown upside. And everyone is just going to be on the field more. And that's just a positive for yardage and touchdown. So it's still good that Rice comes back and is going to elevate this offense past what it already is, which is already very good. But for Kelce in particular, I just think it really limits his potential target share every week. There's going to be way fewer games where he's racking up all these receptions. He's already not used that much in the red zone. That'll come down a little bit as well. So it is a net negative. Past data has also shown us that you want to sell high on tight ends. Like, at any point of the season, unless you have like the top 2 tight end, it is good to trade them away, acquire something else, because tight ends are so volatile that if you can actually extract value from one of their peaks, it's a great thing to do. And when the tight end is also 36 years old, heading into the second half of the season with added target competition added on, it's just a good idea after 2 games to let him go if you can. He's my tight end 14 rest of season. I'd be fine either pairing him with a running back or wide receiver for a slight upgrade at that position, or just trading him straight up for like someone you can rotate into the flex spot. Like, this doesn't have to be, wide receiver, running back too, but if there's someone that, like, because again, buys, injuries, bad matchups, all these things, you're going to have to be using your bench. If there's just like a really solid, bench running back or wide receiver, probably a wide receiver, honestly, I don't think anyone's really giving up, a consistent flex running back. So if you can target like a flex wide receiver, especially if you were lucky on free agency and you got like a Harold Fannin or something, I would rather just be like, okay, I'm just going to start Fannin rest of season. I'll trade Kelce away for someone I can occasionally put into the flex or second flex spot. Like, I think that's a totally fine move to make instead of rotating in tight end, because tight end is so volatile and so hard to rotate in that you're just going to be really frustrated always starting the wrong one. Just get rid of Kelce and get some extra flex help. And again, my favorite trades are those slight upgrade ones, the 2-for-1s. Like, you can't just say like, oh, here's like 2 flex players for running back 1. No one's doing that. But if you can package like Kelce plus like a running back 25 rest of season for like the running back 18, 19 rest of season, just get an upgrade on that running back. I think those are the best trades to do, because you're just trying to trend towards that playoff lineup, trend towards that lineup that is the best starting lineup in the playoffs. All right. On to the buys, where I think 2 to 3 glaringly obvious buys are Lamar, Zay Flowers, and to an extent Derrick Henry as well. It's tougher on Henry because he's coming off 120 something yards. Didn't score touchdowns, so that's good. But like 120 yards last week. It's hard to like ever truly buy low on him because people always understand that he has that upside. But I would definitely say Lamar and Zay are absolutely the two clear, obvious buy lows this week. I think everyone understands the upside, but I think some people are a little bit hesitant in Baltimore, just being like, oh, they're 1-5. They might tank rest of season. They've got all these injuries. I am expecting Lamar to be 100% coming. So they have the bye this week, coming off the bye in week 8. I expect him to be 100%. I expect him to play in that game, and I expect him to be the number one quarterback among everyone rest of season, and for Zay to be a very consistent like mid to low end wide receiver 2 moving forward. Again, Ravens defense decimated by injuries. They're currently tied with the Browns at 1-5. Again, I would be more concerned if this wasn't Baltimore, if this wasn't Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry, and Zay Flowers. We know that when those three are healthy, this is a great team. For a lot of teams, and the coaching staff also good, they're not going to let them just like lie down and take the L this season. For a lot of teams, you could argue this is setting up for a tank, right? If they lose any of their like 2 games after the bye, they go to 2-6. Most teams are like, pack it up, we're going to come back next year with a better draft pick and we'll try and get things done then. But as things stand right now, I would be shocked if that did happen. The Bengals are 2-4, and they have Joe Burrow for the foreseeable future. Like or they have Joe Flacco for the foreseeable future. If Burrow does return, it's going to be really late in the season. So for a while, they're 2-4, and they've got Flacco at quarterback. We know the Browns aren't doing anything, so they're not in contention to win this division. Then you have the Steelers at 4-1. But look at who the Steelers have beaten. They beat the 0-6 Jets by 2 points. They lost by 14 to Seattle. They had a good win against New England, but that was also a game where the Patriots turned the ball over 5 times. They had a goal line fumble at like the inch-yard line and a goal line interception. Like New England should have won that game. On average, Pittsburgh loses that one. Then they squeak out an international win against the Vikings, and then they beat the 1-5 Browns. So the quarterbacks that Pittsburgh has faced have been Justin Fields, Sam Darnold, Drake May, Carson Wentz, and Dylan Gabriel. Not exactly the toughest schedule so far, but upcoming, they have 2 matchups against Baltimore, which is great for this, right? If Baltimore just wins those 2 games, we're already seeing a huge flip in the standings. They've got a matchup against the Packers, the Chargers, the Colts, the Bills, the Lions. Like, there's a lot of games looking forward that the Steelers are underdogs in. Meanwhile, after the bye, Baltimore's upcoming schedule is home versus the Bears, at the Dolphins, at the Vikings, at the Browns, home versus the Jets, home versus the Bengals, home versus the Steelers, and then at the Bengals. That is a much, much, much easier schedule than Pittsburgh has, and look-ahead lines have them favored in every single game remaining for the rest of the season, including both of their matchups against the Steelers. Again, I think Lamar is going to be the quarterback 1 rest of season. I think Flowers is going to have a lot of floor games where he's at 6 for 60, 5 for 70, kind of games like that. But he's going to have that as a floor mixed in with some ceiling games. And if they're in must-win mode and their defense is allowing a league-leading 32.3 points per game, that's going to unlock an insane ceiling for both these two. And again, I said you can kind of fringe throw in Derrick Henry. It's not great that the defense is this bad, but I can promise you, if they're in must-win mode remaining, he's going to have all the touches in this backfield. And if they're favored in every single game remaining rest of the season, what do we always talk about with Derrick Henry? He is very, very game script dependent. He's one of the best running backs in NFL history, but in terms of fantasy production, he needs them to be winning. So with them being 1-5, he hasn't really hit as much, but they're favored in every single game remaining for the rest of the season. And if they're racking up win, he's going to have a lot of games of 100 and a touchdown. So technically, it's fragile here. Yes, if they happen to pick up a loss or 2, in the couple weeks after the bye, if Lamar happens to tweak his hamstring again, yes, this can end up very badly, and then they can tank in the final weeks of the season. But what could also happen is that all 3 of these guys are league winners. Because if you have Lamar Jackson, he could win MVP. I don't think it would happen this season. I think there's other people. I hope Baker kind of wins it this season. But there is a world where he comes out here and he's throwing for like 300 yards a game with like 60, 70 rushing yards a game. He's scoring all these touchdowns because the defense is bad. Like, he could average like 30 fantasy points per game and be a clear MVP in the NFL. If that's in his range of outcomes, I think you kind of just have to trade for him. And if that outcome is a possibility, who's he throwing to? I mean, Zay Flowers is going to be absolutely epic in those games as well. So again, Lamar, quarterback 1 this season, Zay, wide receiver 20, Henry, running back 10. I think it's a great time to trade for all three. I'd also be going after Judkins after his down game. I've seen a lot of people panic, kind of saying, the snaps went way down because of the negative game script. I get being concerned about that because the Browns stink, right? They're not favored. They are favored in a couple games, I think, but they're not favored in very many games, probably not more than like 2 games, more rest of the season. But what I would respond to that is like, how many running backs in the NFL are truly game script proof? Like maybe 10? And while some other running backs are also on teams that are just going to win more, you can really only extend that to like 15 total running backs that you're not too worried about game script in most games. Like for most running backs that are not basically running back ones, that's going to be the case, that there's going to be some games that they lose, that they get down big, and they have a bad game. But I don't think that Judkins failed last week because they lost, right? I mean, they've lost other games and he's done great. So it's not just that they lost. It's not just that they lost by a lot, because there's been games where they've lost by a lot and he's done great. The ground game just didn't get going. And that's just going to happen sometimes to some teams where they can't run the ball and they felt like they had to drop back 58 times. I can tell you one thing. The plan in Cleveland is not to drop back 58 times per game. Judkins still had 12 of the team's 17 rush attempts. It was just apparent pretty early on that the ground game wasn't going to work if they really wanted to, because if early on Judkins was riffing off like 5-6 yards of play, he'd have gotten more work. Even if the game ended up being, as lopsided as it was, he would have ended up getting more touches. But because it wasn't working, they're like, okay, well, it's not really worth running into a brick wall every play. Let's drop back and try passing the ball. But he's looked fantastic this season. I don't think there's going to be that many games remaining that he's not going to be able to get anything going on the ground. Cleveland does have the 3rd best remaining strength of schedule for running backs. That includes the Dolphins this week, where he's probably going to dominate. They get the Jets in week 9, Baltimore in week 10 with their defense falling apart, the Raiders in week 11, Titans in week 14, Bears in week 15. Those are a lot of very positive matchups for running backs, a lot of games that Judkins can get going. And what I also want to point out is, again, look at the last couple of games he had before this dud. They played the Packers, the Lions, and the Vikings. If we were super concerned about game script, those would be teams we'd be terrified of for Judkins, but he had 19, 25, and 24 touches. He had 95, 115, and 128 yards. It was just a tough game for him, a down game. That is going to happen for a lot of running backs across the NFL. He's a mid-range running back too for me rest of season. And he's one that if he starts to really hit, and this offense starts to hit, because again, it's a very, very young offense, rookie quarterback, rookie wide receivers, rookie tight end, rookie running back, like so many young players. If they start to put it together just a little bit later in the season, we could have some upside here. Maybe they win a game or two. And you'd have Judkins, obviously, in any favorable game script, he's going to crush. But even if they just keep it close, even if maybe they rely on him to keep it close, there's going to be a lot of games where he's very good rest of season. Another player to trade for is Chris Olave, the king of expected fantasy points, finally hit on a big play this last week, but was again held out of the end zone, again failed to hit 100 receiving yards despite his 5th game in 6 weeks with double-digit targets. Olave is now 4th among all wide receivers in usage per game on the season and 5th over the last month. Only Drake London, Puka Nacua, George Pickens, and Devonta Adams are seeing more usage than Chris Olave over the last month, but he's only 33rd in half PPR points per game. Olave has 1 less target than Puka Nacua. He has a 7-target lead over Jamar Chase in 3rd place. And I know a common response to that is, yes, Nick, he's getting a lot of targets, but they're not good targets. And I know that, right? But when I talk about expected fantasy points, when I talk about usage, 5th best usage among all wide receivers over the last month. That is not talking about total targets. That is talking about usage. That takes into account that a 5-yard target at the 50-yard line is worth a lot less than a 5-yard target at the 5-yard line heading into the goal line. It is taking that into account. He's still seeing exceptional usage. If he were an average wide receiver on an average team, we would expect him to be putting up mid-range wide receiver 1 numbers. I would say he's an above average wide receiver. And while this is a below average team, they have not been that bad. Like, they've probably outperformed a lot of people's expectations. The quarterback play has not been egregious. It's been below average. And so we should probably assume that the rest of the season, he's not going to hit his expected points per game production, but he doesn't need to. We're expecting him to be a mid-range wide receiver 1, and he's producing as a wide receiver 3. That gap is not going to remain that wide all season. Rattler is not that bad of a quarterback. I can promise you of that. He's actually been a lot better than people think. So again, not saying he's going to be a mid-range wide receiver 1, but he's a phenomenal flex play every week. Probably someone you can trust at wide receiver 2. One of these days, he's going to turn these like 12 target games into something like 9 for 130 and 2 touchdowns, and you'll never be able to get him after that. So what I would do is I would at least just like message the team that has him. Just see what it'll take, like see what they want for him, because the usage is awesome and it's consistent. There's a lot of wide receivers that are posting, decent numbers on average, but it's like 15, 2, 17. And that kind of up and down production can be frustrating in fantasy. You know that every week Olave is going to go out there. He's going to get 10 targets. At worst, it seems like he's pulling in like 5 for 50, and eventually he's going to have that spike. And so especially in a full PPR league, he's giving you that baseline of production. He just honestly is hit on the low end. Like, he's a high floor, high ceiling wide receiver, but he's just kind of hitting on that like high floor every week. Trade for him before he shows that high ceiling, because once he does, people are going to look at the stat lines and be like, oh, wait a minute, this guy's awesome to just put into the starting lineup every week. He is on pace for 181 targets over the season. You should not be able to buy low on someone who's on pace for 181 targets across the season. All right, I have 10 more trade targets available on my website, thefantasyfootballadvice.com. You can also see each team's remaining strength of schedule and their playoff strength of schedule by position. And that'll, of course, update every week as we count for the new remaining strength of schedule, the new remaining schedule overall, and the updated data for each defense. I'll be back tomorrow to go over my Week 7 rankings, and then Friday to go my favorite underdog plays this week. Please subscribe on YouTube or Spotify if you are new here. But that, my friends, be the end of this one. And thank you all for watching.